The Free People Show, episode 36.
The Free People Show is a show about the practice and politics of being free. Free from government, free from coercion, and free to be yourself. Host Phil Anderson is a libertarian, a Christian, and was the kind of kid who, according to his grandmother, just wouldn't shut up. Phil and his co-hosts will talk politics, but also life in general, challenging you, entertaining you, persistently rapping on the back door of orthodox two-party politics, sparing nobody and taking no prisoners, maybe even making you laugh. Tweet us at @FreePeopleShow with questions and suggestions, or comment on Facebook during or after the show. For information about being a guest, hosting a live broadcast, or sponsoring the show, email info@freepeopleshow.com. Thanks for listening. Now, here's your host, Phil Anderson.
And welcome to the Free People Show, episode 36. We're so happy to have you here tonight. You can catch this show at freepeopleshow.com, and if you go to freepeopleshow.com, make sure to patronize our sponsors and use our Amazon link. That's a way that we get a little bit of revenue. Doesn't cost you anything, doesn't cost us anything. The good folks at Amazon allow us to push things through and make a little cash on them. My special thanks to co-hosts Patrick Baird, Ron DePauw, Miles Kristen. Ron and Patrick are here with us tonight. Engineer Samuel Anderson, business agent R.J. DePauw, not the same person. Show webmaster Dustin Dreifer, show contributors Jeff Korch, Jay Ranchad, John Migloch, and the Libertarian Party of Dane County. As I mentioned, you can find the Free People Show at freepeopleshow.com, as well as on our host platform, Spreaker. You can also find us on Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, SoundCloud, any other podcasting app that you might want to use. We should be available on there, Podcast Addict, Podcast Republic, etc., as well as on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks to everyone listening on Twitter tonight. Hope you enjoy our beautiful logo. Ron DePauw is a veteran of the United States Army, a former recruiter, an employee of the state, which that does not make him a statist. Just an employee of the state, a tool of the state, but a paid tool of the state.
A slave, if you will.
A slave, if you will.
A well-paid tool of the slave.
Yes. A PSYOP expert, a grilling master, but you guys didn't know that. I just ad-libbed that. And surprisingly, still a libertarian, a new father, a rum and coke drinker, although tonight it is something else.
Badger Club.
Badger Club. And a BAMF, whatever that is. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you, Phil.
Patrick Baird is the former treasurer. I have to keep rewriting your intros. The former treasurer
Run a pencil through that.
of the Libertarian Party of Wisconsin and the campaign manager, and was the campaign manager for Anderson for U.S. Senate. He is my on the ticket with me. We are running for governor and lieutenant governor of Wisconsin. I need to rewrite this whole thing.
Apparently.
It's a good thing I'm not the campaign manager, because I would be
we'd be in a lot of trouble.
It would be in a lot of trouble if I was in charge of writing stuff and keeping track of stuff. He is the author and creator of The Libertarian Federalist, which you can find at libertarianfederalist.com. We're eagerly awaiting the 4th volume of that series. And on Facebook, he's also the author of a series of spy novels called The Beatnik Spy. That's actually what we're waiting for the 4th version of. He drinks hams, although tonight it is...
I'm trying to work my way up.
Badger Club.
Although we had some wonderful $1.25 beers on Saturday.
I tell you what, folks. If you're ever traveling up Highway 47 between Appleton and Shawano and travel through this little town called Black Creek, not Creek, Crick, Black Creek, stop at Peggy's Midtown, because at Peggy's Midtown they play the best old country music, some of which have words that would trigger many of the population if you listen to it closely. $1.25 cans of hams, Blatz, Old Milwaukee, and PBR too, maybe?
No, not
I don't know,
PBR.
just those 3. And while we were there, spending very little on beer, the owner's husband had made cookies, so we were given free cookies. It was the best.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yep.
It was the best.
A fun little hour, cost us $5.
Yes, it was. That included the tip. Yeah. Fantastic. 2 beers and a cookie, $5 each. So I highly recommend it. So tonight, into the show, there's a lot going on in politics. We'd like to keep track of sort of the general atmosphere to a certain extent. Today's Western society gets caught up in a right versus left sort of thing. We're going to use that tonight to a certain extent to talk about right, middle, left. because that's the way that a lot of people that listen to the show and that interact with politics think of it. So we have to address that in that way. We can't just refuse to talk about things in terms of life, right or left, because that would be silly. That people wouldn't know what we were talking about. So we're going to talk about that tonight a little bit. But first, I'd like to point something out. So it was, I think this morning it might have hit, or maybe it was yesterday.
It was today.
Today. That President Trump is putting Congress on notice that they need to solve the DACA, which I don't even remember what that stands for. But basically, it was a rule, an executive order that President Obama put in place that allowed children who had ended up here to stay. And so illegal. Yeah, they arrived illegally, but they were underage. Their parents are not here, as I understand it.
Well, I think some cases they are.
Okay. In any case, there's a huge hue and cry about President Trump. He's deporting people. President Obama was on the did a news conference today, which might have been the first one he's done since he left office. I'm not sure, but this is the first one I've noticed, talking about how terrible it was, telling stories, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I think we all agree that the situation is tragic, and the situation was brought about by a lack of good philosophy and good governmental practice, of course, by the federal government. But what to do now is the issue. But I'll tell you one thing. Libertarians vary on how they feel about borders to a certain extent. I'm more of an open borders guy, which is also in combination with being very strongly for private property, which that's a whole other show. The collision of private property rights and open borders is a whole other show. But I will say that I do appreciate the fact that the president is trying to make Congress actually do their job. If he did the same thing with,
apparently he hadn't learned anything from the healthcare fiasco.
I think maybe I'm giving him credit. He's not thinking like, well, this is a case where Congress should do their job, and that's Congress's rightful place to legislate on immigration or whatever. I don't think he's thinking of it that way, but I'll give him some credit just to point out that Congress should be doing its job, and it's very easy for them not to. They become so polarized, but gerrymandered districts and all the identity politics that they play and trying to demonize the other side, et cetera, for them to not get anything done. And I do appreciate, even if it's not intentionally, the president trying to get Congress to do something that probably will require some work across the aisle or across ideological lines anyway. So I appreciate that much. But it does bring up into our original idea for what we're going to talk about tonight, and that is right, left, middle. And what does that mean? Where are we at? We just spent, Patrick and I spent most of a day at the Shawano County Fair, sometimes administering the world's smallest political quiz, which is more of a three-dimensional spectrum in terms of finding where you are in the political spectrum. We're going to talk about just the good old-fashioned two-dimensional spectrum, but it's amazing how many people fell on the libertarian side of the axis that leads from right to left, thankfully. So that's what we're going to appeal to, of course, and that's how we feel. All people feel. We just need to bring it out at them that they're actually libertarians at heart to a certain extent. But are we going to talk about the right, left?
Right. Let's start out with the right. My thought was we had a fairly dramatic election last year that changed the landscape for both the right and the left.
It was a stunner.
It was a stunner. And so it's been 9 months since Trump's been in office, long enough to have formed some judgments about him and his effect on the Republican Party. So, starting with the right, look at it this way: going forward, what is the future for, in particular, the Republican Party? Because at one point, I think optimistically, the Republican Party was talking about becoming a long-term majority party. They would be the
big tent, right? They would be the big tent.
With the big tent, they would be the party that would be the center-right coalition that would govern the country the way the Democrats did for many, many decades, and they came close to doing that. But
when? Like,
well,
Reagan, Bush.
Yeah, I'd say it started with Reagan. I think Clinton was a center-left candidate or center-left president. So they didn't, he was not at all successful in pulling the country much to the left. So as soon as he exited and Bush, George W. Bush came in, then you had definitely a center-right coalition there.
We're being attacked by Scout the Show Dog.
Cow, that dog is going out of his mind right now.
Her.
Anyway,
probably why you've misgender identified her.
I think we identified the fact that
triggered her.
She's a left-wing dog. Apparently,
you triggered her.
Totally
Patrick triggered the dog.
Talking about Republicans.
All emotion, no logic.
So whatever dreams the Republicans may have had of having this center-right coalition that was going to have an electoral majority for long term, started to slip away, in my opinion, during the later years of the Bush presidency, when he lost the 2006 midterms, and the Democrats took control of Congress. And
on an anti-war platform, more or less, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Interestingly enough,
we'll get to that in a little bit later segment of the program. But
what a joke!
But clearly, he was losing grip on that idea towards the end of his presidency, and right after that, you had Obama was elected, and then you had the Tea Party came to being. And as somebody who was still a Republican at that point in my life, barely, because 2008 was like the last. My last time voting as a Republican, really. I understood where the Tea Party was coming from, because the Tea Party was all about, and this is one thing that the media totally got wrong. Tea Party was about Republicans being unhappy with their leadership, with the fact that the Republican leadership in Washington was not governing like conservatives. They were not governing the way they promised when they ran. They were spending money. They were creating new government entitlements. And I think that there was a lot of backlash from the base over that. It was incorrectly interpreted as a racist reaction to Obama by the press, who was totally wrong on that. But that eventually led to the presidency of Donald Trump, where he was the ultimate rebuke to a Republican Washington establishment, as well as all the other. The media, Democrats, bureaucrats, everybody else. So my question, I guess, is the Tea Party failed. They never really managed to mount any kind of substantial opposition to Obama. They weren't able to stop him. The Republicans did win back the Congress, but that was probably due partly to gerrymandering.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely,
and then also, you had 8 years of triumphant Obama, not able to get anything through Congress, but he got a lot of things done through executive acts like DACA.
Mm-hmm.
So the conservatives never really mounted any kind of a vigorous defense against the left throughout those years. And now you've got President Trump, who so far has accomplished very little. He's got Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, and that's really about it. The whole health care repeal fiasco, was a clear example of the fact that even with all the branches of the government in their control, the Republicans can't get anything done. And that gets to the point I wanted to make, and maybe we can do this in the next segment, is why the Republican Party is divided currently, why they can't seem to even get together amongst themselves to get anything done, and the ideological and other reasons behind that.
Well, it comes quite a bit down to, is the base in control of what's going on, right? I mean, you mentioned gerrymandering, which is a big issue. And we talk about it a lot in Wisconsin, but I'm sure it happened all across the country, maybe not to the extent that it happened in Wisconsin, but surely...
It's a pretty narrow victory in Wisconsin. Trump won Wisconsin, but not that many votes.
Right. I mean, I'm talking about Congress, though.
Oh, Congress,
Congress is packed by a lot of people who have not as much interest in working towards the middle, because their vote totals is not as drastic as state assembly districts in Wisconsin, where half of them are uncontested. But where, like, for example, District 2, where we live, used to be a somewhat contested district. Now it's dominated by whichever Democrat runs.
Because it wasn't just the city of Madison.
It's the city of Madison loops around Janesville and gets Beloit.
Right.
And Paul Ryan's district, District 1, is gerrymandered to his benefit. So you end up with a Congress that is less incentivized, less likely to work towards the middle, because they're not winning 55 to 45. They're winning 65 to 35. They're winning by margins that that give them a mandate to go in there